or just have more of certain foods
Mm.
in certain seasons. So it's not to say you can't have broccoli all year round. I quite enjoy broccoli personally, but I would have it more um, in the right season, or like we're going to talk now about dark colored foods, blues, blacks, reds, the darker the better. So I just, in my head and my experience, would eat them or gravitate towards more of them in winter. However, if I needed that energy, whether it's for nourishing the kidneys or the adrenals, or for a little bit of blood nourishment as well, like you can go to these foods um,
Mm.
in other seasons as well. But for the most part, for winter, um, in terms of food therapy, there's a goal for each season. And so we came out of autumn where we were talking about hydrating and nourishing the lungs and the large intestine. And now we're in winter, which is all about warming, replenishing, and tonifying. I love also the language of Chinese medicine, because there are words that we don't use in Western nutrition, like tonify. They're like, what's that mean? um, it's not a word when you talk about proteins, fats, or carbs, but it is this beautiful understanding in Chinese medicine. So that's something for people to think about when they're looking at their foods, and also picking ingredients. Winter's also all about the salty flavor, is a different flavor, predominant flavor in each season. Again, it's not to say you can't have sweet and sour and spice as well, but having foods that are inherently salty and having a little bit more salty condiments like good quality sea salt, or tamari or soy sauce, miso, olives, capers, like all these beautiful natural and sea vegetables are really nourishing for the kidneys, rather than adding just lots of salt, but
I've
having.
been nourishing my kidneys with capers since I think I was
Oh,
like
I love
3
capers.
years old. It was like my favorite food of like of
Really? Oh,
yeah.
that's great. And people are drawn to different flavors. So I get a lot of people, but mainly salty or sweet. Like people are either sweet fans or not. And then you ask them, and then they're like, oh, yeah, I do like salty, chips or capers or whatever it is. So, but the point being that we all need to have a little bit more good quality salty foods or condiments in this season in winter. Um, so I mentioned just now the dark colored foods as well. So the most common ones, the most obvious ones, are like black beans, black lentils, kidney beans. Black sesame is a really popular water element Chinese medicine food, and not just the black sesame seeds themselves, but you could have black tahini. You could toast the black sesame seeds. I really want to share today, like give people examples and inspiration, because food lists are great.
Mm.
And there are lots of them for Chinese medicine, whether it's the energetics of the food or the color or temperature, thermal nature of them. But like people often say, well, how am I going to use all these ingredients?
I
So
mean, we've produced a food list, and even I look at it sometimes, and I'm like, gosh, like there's got to be a better way. And
it's a good
I
start.
know,
No, it's a good start.
good start. And I know some people are like, no, give me a list, and I will
Sure.
go and execute. And for me, but
That's the
you're
metal people.
you're tending they're the metal people. That's my ultimate weakness is people who have metal ways of thinking, and I'm trying to sprout and do things
Yeah.
chaotically.
Yeah. I'm the same. Total wood. Total wood. So food lists are great, but yeah, like if we just talk about black sesame for a while, you can sprinkle them on anything. Obviously, I like to toast them just a little bit to release the oils in them, and then cool them, put them in a jar. I like to make black sesame pudding, and soft textured things are really wonderful in winter. So poached fruits and cooked stews and puddings, whether they're sweet or savory. So you can use any milk of choice. I like to use a soya milk. We'll talk a little bit about yin and nourishing the yin later, and soya is a wonderful way. Good quality soya products. The soya milk pudding, black sesame, so it becomes like charcoal gray. It's delicious. It's very easy and simple, but it's very relaxing in that
Mm,
way. And
yeah.
you're using your black sesame. You can make crackers with them. You can put tahini on your oatmeal, which is a nice winter breakfast as well. So, and also black sesame oil, fantastic way to get that in. Really good for the yin nourishing part of the water element as well. So those are some examples or uses of those. Beans are a little bit more obvious. People make soups and stews and casseroles with them. Meat, if you're a meat eater, great time to have things like beef and lamb, especially in terms of that warming, tonifying, replenishing goal for food therapy in winter. So now's the time. With all of these, of course, in terms of yin and yang, we don't want to overdo it. So I don't want everyone to go out and eat copious amounts of black sesame or lamb. There is a fine line to.
Yeah, and that fine line you mentioned, and I think that's kind of what we were talking about at the top, is if you know, sometimes this is just a little bit too far, it's a little bit too much for you to integrate that level of like, oh my gosh, okay, this is good in this season, then it kind of gets put aside, and then your energy is somewhere a little bit more close to home, and that's where we say stay in spleen land. Don't worry about these rules. Stick to the foundations of that earth element, and then you can, you know, all right, now I've got a little bit of capacity to acknowledge black foods. Okay, cool. I'll do that a little bit, but you've got your base, and you don't have to overthink, because that's what your spleen is doing. You don't have capacity to digest all of this information. So I love that you always put that out there.
And it's also from personal experience. When I was living in China and I just went crazy. Like I was just in heaven. I was like, oh, there's all this depth to nutrition and food and energy and colors and things. So I just absorbed it all. That's I was the opposite. Some people don't have a capacity, and that's fine. You just add, like I said, just add one thing a week or a month. It doesn't matter, you know, or just know, okay, Kimberly and Mason talked about dark colored foods. If I'm going to the market and I see darker colored kale, like Tuscan kale or dinosaur kale, that's darker than normal curly kale. Maybe I'll try it because it's darker. Just like start there. Or, oh, I found blackberries or black beans or something. And you just go, oh, okay, I'm just going to have that. And that's fine.